Hi, David. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very excited to talk to you, Sherry.
So excited to talk to you. Have to admit I'm secretly stalking you a little bit. I am an admirer from afar because you are an Ironman athlete, and I have this thing where I love to follow people who are further ahead in life than me, who are doing spectacular, epic
Mm.
things. And this is like my trajectory for life. And so thank you for being that person because you don't know this, but you're on my wise counsel. I've just placed you there and
Nice.
now I'm just telling you
I
about
love
it.
it. I
Yes.
love it. Well, and it's perfect timing too, because I'm embarking on a project where I am going to be tracking myself over the next 12 months to see how does a guy as old as me who has done like a ton of endurance athletics, but I've done it mostly through will. Some athletic ability, but will. But I'm going to get super hard about like training as an athlete. And so I'm going to document that over the next year. Like, can you become an athlete? But no matter what that means to you at whatever age.
Wow.
So that's going to be fun.
Wow. That's a little bit funny, I have to say, because in my eyes, you are an athlete. I mean, you've done already how many Ironmen, and you went from being trauma and stressed out
Yep.
to overweight smoker for over 20 years to suddenly becoming an Ironman athlete. I think you've done over 20 Ironman. So how
Close
are
to
you now
20.
just how many?
Close to 20. I've done
Close to 20.
18
Okay.
Ironmans.
Okay. Only 18. Right. But how
Right.
how do you not consider yourself an athlete at this point?
Well, it's not that I'm not an athlete. I've done athletic things, and the Ironmans are tough. I've done things that are way, way, way harder than Ironmans. Um, I've done 50-mile runs, 100-mile runs. I did a 8,000K solo bike ride.
Oh wow.
So I've done some crazy, crazy stuff, right? But I've done athletic things, but I don't think I'm an athlete. Like people that I've worked with that are trainers or physical therapists or whatever, they're like, dude, you like figure out how to get to the finish line through will and not through ability.
Hmm.
And why don't we change that? Because if you set a finish line, you'll figure out a way to get there no matter what. But
Hmm.
why don't we get you prepared? Like, why don't you prepare like an athlete? And I'm like, all right, that sounds intriguing. I'd like to see about that because most people don't want to do this kind of stupid stuff. But if they do, then it's like it's easy to quit, right? Or it's easy to like say, oh, I never could do it, and oh, I got to prepare for like 10 years, and then life gets in the way and you never do it. Right? There's a lot of reasons why we don't do it. I've just said like set the goal, get it done. But a lot of times I might have even gone into some of the events that I've done like untrained
Wow. Okay. Okay.
just to see if I could do it. Like Sherry, the one time I called myself an athlete, the one time is I said, wouldn't it be cool if you could wake up one day, and I won't bore you with the whole backstory, but wouldn't it be cool one day if you could just wake up and run 50 miles without training just because you wanted to do it that day? So what, 50 miles is like what, 80K or something, right? So how could I wake up one day and go, yeah, I'm going to put on shoes and go run 80K today? And if I could do that, I think that would be an athlete. So I actually did that one time. Is I
Wow.
woke up and I just said, hey, I hadn't trained, and it was middle of summer, it was hot, and there was a race that I knew about that was up in the mountains. And I called up the race director the day before and I said, hey, if I showed up tomorrow to the race, would you let me do it? And he's like, yeah, okay, fine. Because I was way past the cutoff to sign up. So I showed up on no training and ran 50 miles.
Oh my God. Okay, so first you're speaking my language, okay? And I want to come back to that because I'm gonna 100% challenge you with this whole athlete thing because again, you're wrong, David, okay? But before we get into that, let's come back to your
Yeah.
story because this is so profound.
Mm.
How do you go from being a smoker for so many years, overweight, a lot of things happening in your life, a lot of traumatic events, to suddenly becoming the athlete that you are today?
Yeah. Hmm. It's a great question. I've thought about it a lot. I've talked about it a lot. Um, I think part of it was that I never had a mentor, Sherry. I never had like somebody to guide me. You
Mm,
know, my mom was ridiculously young, my dad was ridiculously old. There was almost a 40-year age difference between them.
Mhm.
And so she couldn't have given me guidance because she was almost my age, right? I mean, she had me when she was like 20. And my dad couldn't give me guidance because, by the time I needed guidance, 8 or 10 years old, he was like 70 or something, and that's just like whatever. So I kind of didn't figure stuff out until later in life. And I had a pretty tough childhood and pretty tough young adulthood. Um, a lot of trauma, a lot of very, very difficult circumstances. And I, turned to not being very healthy. I wasn't ever like really, really unhealthy. I mean, I had to work hard. I worked hard. I was a little bit of an overeater, maybe from stress or whatever. I was never athletic, so I never had time for it. I was a smoker because sometimes cigarettes were cheaper than food, and I couldn't afford both. So, smoking allowed me not to eat, and whatever. It's just I could bore you with a bunch of stories as to how I got to the point, but I found myself one day, Sherry, just kind of at the bottom of the pit,
Mm.
and it's like I was married to an abusive alcoholic. I had two young twins that they were 4 years old, and they needed to get to safety. And I was getting to the end of my rope of being able to protect them and me, without fighting back. And I didn't want to fight back. And she was just getting more and more violent, and it was rough. I had a great career and some good friends, but I was so stressed out. I probably was ready to have a heart attack.
I'm sorry.
Overweight, smoker, really, really stressed out. And just a bunch of things happened at one time, like in a very short period of time, that gave me the opportunity to wake up.
Mm.
And the the things that happened was I realized I couldn't be in that environment anymore. I couldn't keep my kids in that environment.
Mm.
It was going to be physically dangerous for all of us. And so I said, I got to get out. At that same time, my sister got diagnosed with brain cancer. And that kind of was a wake up call for me saying, oh, shoot, you mean you actually got to contemplate that you might not live forever and you got to make some choices? And then at the same time, I had a friend who just caught me at the right time and said the right words. And I wasn't really a victim because I was really overachieving in a lot of other areas and whatever. But um, I probably had kind of a little bit of a victim mentality. Like, why does this stuff keep happening to me? Why am I always in this kind of trouble? And why do I have this kind of issue? And, how could I be married to somebody so mean? And blah, blah, blah. And he finally just said the right words to me, Sherry. And they were like, he goes, dude, I'm so freaking tired of hearing this for the last several years.
Wow.
He says, you're the problem. He said, you're the problem. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not the problem. And I complained about the boss and I complained about the ex-wife and I complained about the whatever. And he goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. He says, here's the problem. He says, in life, everything is a wild animal.
Mm.
And you go find the wild animal and you go pick it up and you feed it, you give it some water and you give it a nice home, and then you go to pet it and it bites you. And
Mm.
you wonder what the hell. He goes, wild animals don't know any better. They bite. Why don't you find out why you continually attract rabid dogs and wild animals? Why don't you look in the mirror and see who you are? And I'm like, whoa, you
Whoa.
mean I could be the problem? And
Wow.
so long answer to your question, Sherry, was that I literally, there was a point in time that one night after that talk where I went home, my kids and I were safe. I was contemplating the recent news about my sister, and I'm looking in the mirror going, your buddy Chris, he said, you're the problem. Okay, well, what's your problem? And I had like a 3 hour conversation with myself, like a real one, like the first real ever. Like
Mm.
that was the first day I think in my life that I kind of like became aware of stuff. Like, wow, maybe I am the problem. Maybe I'm making bad decisions. Maybe I'm chasing the wrong things. Maybe I can't fix problems that can't be fixed, and I shouldn't beat myself up over it. And like it started me on a path of becoming enlightened and being able to be honest with myself. And if you're honest with yourself, you could do a lot of work, you know?
So good. So good. And I feel that that can only come from being in that rock bottom moment. There's no way
Mhm.
we can get these profound downloads and insights and really even be prepared to make a massive change in our lives until we're in that bottom place. And I see this all the time. We almost have to get to that point of desperation where we're really, really so no longer tolerating our current circumstance in order for us to really, really make a very big change. And so what was that
Mhm.
first step towards change? So clearly there was a massive rearrangement in your life. And then how did that bring you to Ironman and endurance sports in general?
I would answer this differently if I was in the moment.
Okay.
Okay. In the moment, I would have answered you, I had to try something new. I was desperate. I had to figure out a way to stop smoking. And if you run, you can't smoke,
Mm,
and I didn't know how to run, but I figured if I learned how to run, I could not smoke. And then I said, well, shoot, you know what? It I got to be healthy because I got young kids. I don't want to die and get cancer, like my sister, and leave my kids alone because they're going to end up with their mom. And but in the moment, I would have said all of that.
mm,
But I think definitely looking back, the key for me was something I really had to learn. And it might sound silly to some people that listen to this, but the number one thing was compassion. Like I had to just forgive myself.
mm.
And we carry around so many burdens and we're so mean to ourselves. And the inside voice is, I'm not capable enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not popular enough. I'm not this enough. I didn't start work early enough. I wasn't good enough in school. I'm just not as smart as whatever it is. It's too late.
Right.
We just all have this negative talk in our heads. And for me, the negative talk was for since I was a kid, right? Very, very young kid, the negative talk. And so again, at the time I wouldn't have known, but reflecting back on it many, many times and really understanding the process of how I got from there to here, it was compassion. It was like, dude, you didn't know then what you know now, and you know it now.
So
So
beautiful.
you got two choices. You could either know it and pretend like it doesn't exist or not care because you're just about, how many people do you know, like Sherry, like you go, dude, why are you so rude to people? And they
Mm,
go, oh, that's just me. I'm like, well, if you know you're rude, like change,
right.
right? Why are you so sensitive? It pushes people away. Well, I know I'm just that way. Well, if you know you're that way, change,
Right.
right? Right. So either like when you're honest, you could either have compassion for yourself and go, I forgive you for not knowing what you didn't know then, because you know it now. So just like let it go, free your mind. Because if you knew better, you would have done better, but you didn't know better.
Right.
And yeah, I heard 100 times, stop smoking, you idiot. Stop
Right.
smoking, stop smoking, stop. But until I heard it, I
Mm,
didn't hear it.
right.
And then you just have to say, okay, just move forward, forgive yourself. So I think it was compassion and just to say, you know what? At 37 or 8 years old, you never ran in your life. That doesn't mean you can't be a runner.
Yes. So
You
good.
know, at 38 years old, your whole adult life, you were a smoker. That doesn't mean you can't be a non-smoker, right? You've never worried about your own health. It doesn't mean you can't now start to worry about your own health. Like now you know. So make today, day one,
Right.
whatever that is. And I didn't count the days, but I'm just saying, like, that thought process of day one. And once I gave myself a little compassion, then that allowed me not to judge myself
Mm,
because how often do we not do something because we're not this or we're not that or other people are better than or whatever. So I didn't judge myself. It again, this was a process. It wasn't like all of a sudden every light bulb went off. Um, but that's what started it. And then I literally just figured it out. Like, how do you run down the block? Okay, now you did that. How do you run a mile?
right.
Okay, you did that. How do you run a 5K? How do you run a 10K?
Mm,
I could never imagine running a 10K. Are you kidding me? you know, and I've run 4 marathons back to back to back to back.
mm,
Like, and this was a guy who didn't even know what it meant to run a 10K.
right.
And so you can learn just as long as you push yourself. And I thought to myself, well, if you've always limited who you are and you always limited the way you think, why don't you just not have any limits and just see, like, if you want to go do something, go do it. And if you fail, you fail. If you don't, you don't, but you're gonna figure out what you're made of. And I think probably I reacted to life and handled a lot of heavy stuff, but I don't think I ever proactively said, what are you capable of?
Right.
You know?
So good. So good. I love everything that you said, and this is exactly and 100% agreement in terms of the steps that need to take place in order for you to really, really transform. And the first is self-compassion, just
Hmm.
acceptance, self-compassion. I am where I am, no self-judgment. And then, of course, the other really important thing that you said is how you started running one block at a time until it became a mile, and then
Hmm.
5K, and then 10K, and then marathons that are back to back to back to back. And this is what we oftentimes don't look at. We're always looking at comparing ourselves where we wish we were, what we should be doing, what we've always envisioned ourselves, or maybe even to other people, instead of comparing ourselves to where we started from and forgiving
Yeah.
ourselves as well for
Yeah.
all of the past and experiences where we should or felt we should have done more.
Yeah. Let me tell you a super quick story. So, I quit smoking in the beginning of February of the year I quit smoking. Okay. That was in February. In March, I ran the 5K. In the end of March, I did my first mini triathlon. In April, I did an Olympic distance triathlon. Okay. In July of that year, I signed up for a half Ironman.
Hmm.
Okay, now a half Ironman is in American talk, it's 56 miles biking, um, after a 1.2 mile swim, and then before a half marathon, 13-mile run. And I had never done any of those distances
That's
alone. And
amazing.
I'm going to go do them for the first time. And this is only like 4 or 5 months after quitting smoking. I'm still overweight. I don't even understand anything about athletics, nothing about it. And I drive up and I go to this thing and I'm super self conscious, but I go, okay, well, you got this, whatever. And there's a wave start. So they start different age groups at different times. It's a river start. It's in a river that swims in a river. And so I go to the river bank and I go to watch the first few waves take off. And literally, Sherry, every single person is like a Greek god or goddess. They're like 100% muscle, no fat. They're all walking on water. They all are toned and athletic. And I go, what the F are you even doing here, dude? You're not an athlete. This is not you. Like, you do not belong here. What
Mm.
exactly what you were saying, comparing yourself to who you should have been, or maybe even other people. And I looked out and I'm like, dude, you got to go home. Like, this is not you. Like, don't be stupid. So I almost started to leave, and the gun goes off, and these people start swimming. And all of a sudden, one of these Greek god guys flops over on his back and he kind of does a backwards, awkward doggy paddle. And another one of these Greek gods like runs to the side of the bank, swimming bank, because he wants to walk in waist deep water and not swim because he doesn't know how to swim. And another guy is swimming in circles. And I started laughing and I'm like, I can swim better than that. Like, if they don't care that anybody's watching, what do I care? Nobody's going to notice me. And of course, nobody notices you because they're all living their own lives. They're all doing their own thing. They're just being the best they could be. How do I know that one of those guys didn't? The biggest fear in life was water, and now he's trying to swim in a half Ironman. How amazing is that? And I'm judging him, comparing him. So I stopped at that point. I just started laughing. Going, dude, nobody's watching you. What do you care? Just go do what you do.
Right. Yeah. And we live our lives this way, David. I'm glad you brought that up. We live our lives thinking like, oh my God, what are people going to say? If I try this,
Yeah.
what's someone going to think about it? And maybe someone already sees us. And we're super self-conscious about ourselves and our bodies because we're always focused on that one part of us that we don't like, thinking that that's what everyone else is looking at. But thanks to that reminder that everyone's living their own lives. Like nobody cares and nobody sees what you're seeing and nobody sees
Right.
your limitations.
No.
Everyone else is in their own
Yeah.
heads thinking about their own
Yeah.
limitations. Yeah.
Yeah. How many times have you discounted? And anybody listening, I'm going to call bullshit if you say it doesn't happen. How many times you discount somebody that gives you a compliment? The boss said, "Man, you did a really good job," and you go, "Oh, I kind of have to."
Collective.
Or your coworker goes, "Dude, like you killed that meeting," and you're like, "Oh, you sure?" Because I felt like an idiot. And I did. Like, we all just judge us. I mean, well, no,
Right.
like, no. The way that you see yourself is usually not the way that you are.
Yeah.
It's all this negative self-talk, and it's really shocking. One of the things that I do is I do expressive writing workshops, mostly for cancer organizations, and I kind of help people reframe through expressive writing that negative inner voice
Mm.
and get out their emotion and kind of understand how we can reframe the negative self-talk inside. And man, it's a powerful thing how mean we are to ourselves. We'd never be this mean to other people, never,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
it's a process though. You got to really learn that.
Yeah. And then just become aware of it. And then my thing is, and how I teach my students to really address that voice in our head. Well, first of all, there's this voice in our head and we're listening. Okay. So if I'm listening, because right now I'm talking to you, David, you're hearing me talk. So I'm the one who's talking and you're the
Mhm.
one who's listening. So there's this voice in my head that's constantly going, because that's what the mind does. The mind just generates thoughts and I'm receiving those thoughts and I'm listening to those thoughts. But what would happen if, first of all, I separated myself from those thoughts? And then
Mhm.
I thought to myself, well, what if the voice in my head is all lies? That's all the lies. And everything everyone else is telling me is the truth.
Is the
That I
truth,
am a
right?
badass and I am really great at what I just
Yeah.
did. And I just did a really amazing job. And I look really good today. And all these
Yeah.
compliments that I'm receiving is really what's going on. And that voice in my head, those are the lies.
Yeah. And we can reframe it, and especially through writing, expressive writing. If you now read the way that your voice is, sometimes it can be really transformative. And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
so I love it. But again, it's a process. But you gotta just start somewhere. You gotta start somewhere because let's be honest, right? I don't know that many people that get to live more than one life. So I think we get to live one life, right? Pretty much. And so if you're gonna live one life, like why not today? Like why not today? There's a real famous Robin Roberts. She
Mm,
she was a news anchor and a TV host and whatever. She came out with a book and it's like I think the book was like day one. Like
mm,
she kind of goes into each day thinking that today is day one.
right.
Not one day I'm going to do something. Today is day one that I'm going to do.
Yeah. So,
I love that idea. Not one day, but day one. Like just make today the day. Like,
so,
are you gonna need to lose weight? Great. Guess what? Don't open up the box of Oreos. Just don't. Just there you go. Uh,
right. Yeah.
don't one day not open it. Just make today the day you don't open it.
Right. Yeah. We don't know about tomorrow. We don't know that we get another tomorrow. And as you're sharing this, and just as you were talking about writing down your thoughts, so this is the
Hmm.
subconscious mind. We're actually not aware of most of the thoughts that are going on in our mind, or even how our perspective of the world is actually generated in our mind. And so as you're saying this, and I'm thinking, okay, so you went from super traumatic relationship and a series of traumatic events into your life to deep diving into endurance sports. And what
Hmm.
I'm curious about is if this was a healing process for you or if this was a level of avoidance. What have you done
Yeah.
to address that trauma so far?
It's yeah. It's a great question. It's definitely a healing thing. Um. Wow. How can I frame this? Like, I don't know about other people, but I find that some people that are kind of a personality, they're used to being busy
Hmm.
and they like being busy. And sometimes being busy can be a way to avoid
Yes.
dealing with things, right? How many times have you seen in the movies and then you kind of see it in real life somebody who's so successful at work that they kind of forsake their family and then all of a sudden they wake up one day and their kids are older and don't even know who they are, right? And you go and they go, wow, I was working so hard, I was trying to provide, and that's how relationships end up breaking apart because you don't deal with the relationship because you're so busy dealing with life.
Right.
And so what I learned, again, I know light bulbs went off, but I learned this over time, was that endurance athletics for me was an amazing therapeutic place
Yes.
because I could slow my mind down
Hmm.
forcibly. I had to slow my mind down
Hmm.
because if you're going to go for a 2 hour bike ride or an 8 hour run or a 20-hour bike ride, dude, your brain just goes silent
Hmm.
and you can't multitask when you're running 50 miles. You got to be focused on the running,
Hmm.
right? But in life, we're bouncing around from work to personal. I got to call this friend. I got to do this thing. I got this community thing. I got to get dressed for this thing. I got right. And we just go from one thing to another. But endurance athletics lets you focus on the one thing which frees your mind. And I have solved a lot of problems, or at least attempted to solve a lot of problems, or come to grips with things. And I've made some insane revelations about myself and about life that might not make any sense to other people, but they make sense to me, while in the midst of doing crazy endurance stuff. And I've written a couple of books about those lessons learned because they resonate,
Mm.
like 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 and they're parallels. They're parallels to life. Like when to lean on to others and when to know not to, and how to set high enough goals and how to forgive yourself for failure and all of these crazy things that are parallels to life. I discovered those out on the road.
Right. Yeah, so good. So good. And I love that you say that because, you know, we tend to think that when we want to exercise or when we want to change our self-care rituals, it's really around changing the physical body. And maybe that's what it is initially. Maybe it's around, okay, I don't feel really comfortable in my body, or I feel unhealthy, or I really want to make a change. And so that's the reason why we maybe initiate that whole thing anyway. But at one point it just becomes this flow of who you are. And I use running also to clear my mind. I don't run because I'm concerned about how many calories I need to get in today or how many steps I need to get in.
Mhm.
What I do know is that if I don't run, my mind is cloudy. And when I connect with nature, when I'm outside, when I'm smelling that fresh air, when I'm just honoring my body and I'm feeling my body move in that way, I just feel so connected. And to the point where
Mhm.
I don't even listen to music. Like I'm listening to nature, I'm just listening to my breath, I'm just so in tune. And then now the reason why I run is very, very different. It's not to improve my cardio. I don't have any big races coming up anytime
Right.
soon, David, as yours, but it's so important to just mention this because our why continues to change. And when we first decide to start something, there's a reason. But then after a
Mhm.
while, it's a brand new reason that's even more powerful. And so we
Mhm.
get to see our why expand and grow and evolve as we also continue to evolve in life. And that's such a beautiful thing. And I shared with you already this morning, I went for a run and you were about to tell me a couple of tips. I actually
Oh,
want
about
to grab some tips with you. So I went
yeah,
for my
about
run this
hydration. We'll,
morning.
we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I only did the hour this morning, right? And then I came back and I've been having a hard time rehydrating actually. And then you were about to give me some life hacks on how to add some more electrolytes. And even though we're going off on
I
a tangent, I think it's the right time.
okay. Well, it's the right time for the tangent, but see, there you go. You just said it. You said, "Oh, I only ran for an hour." Could you imagine? Some people can't even imagine going running for an hour. Like, holy cow! Some people might not be able to, and some people who could be able to just don't even understand that concept. So you even minimize the hour run. An hour running is serious business. Like for you, it's like, oh, whatever. It's just an hour. It's just 10K. But for like, wow, like don't discount that, because going for an hour run it's a serious run. Anyway, so I'm gonna give you a hack that I learned, and it took me years to learn how to do this. Okay. And finally somebody told me how to do it, and I did it. So you have to determine what your sweat rate is.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, I asked you before we came on, like, do you run kind of in the same conditions and the same effort and the same time? Because if you don't, you need to maybe measure your sweat rate in different circumstances. I,
Hmm.
I live in Las Vegas. I spend a lot of time in the heat, and so if I'm running 4 hours in cool weather, I'm gonna sweat at a different rate than if I'm running 4 hours in hot weather.
Hmm.
Okay. But either way, I should know my sweat rate, because so here's how you do it. So take your clothes off, get naked,
Uh-huh.
weigh yourself before you go for a run.
Right.
Okay. Run for an hour. Don't drink anything, and don't pee. Okay. Don't go run naked unless that's really what you want to do. So put your clothes
That
back
doesn't
on.
sound so
Then go
comfortable.
go for yeah, I know, right? Go run for your hour. Wait a few minutes, right? Because it's you'll sweat after you're done. Wait for a few minutes. Get naked, dry yourself off, especially your hair, whatever. Dry yourself off and weigh yourself.
Hmm.
Okay. You will be shocked at
Right.
how much you lose.
Right.
Shocked.
Right.
Now, not everybody, because not everybody has a high sweat rate. You want to hear? I wish I knew kilos, but I think I kind of know kilos. But if it's warm out, not even if it's super hot, if it's warm out, I can lose 2 kilos an hour
Wow.
running.
Hmm.
Imagine that. Imagine
Right.
how much I got to drink if I'm going to go for a 5 hour run in the heat. That's 10 plus kilos of liquids I'm losing.
No.
What?
Right.
That's impossible.
Right.
So if you don't understand what your sweat rate is, you're not going to take in enough liquid. Then, if you do know, and you might not know, but there are ways to test your sweat rate and the electrolytes that you lose in sweating. I know that I'm a very salty
Hmm.
sweater.
Hmm.
Okay. So again, in life, I could talk in front of 1,000 people and I'm dry as could be. Go for a half hour run, I'm sweating. So, and it's salty sweat. So, uh, I take some electrolytes that are 1,200 milligrams of sodium an
Mm.
hour. I
Wow.
mean, in a pack, and I take sometimes three of those in an hour.
Wow.
3,600 milligrams of sodium in an hour. That's huge. Plus, it has like 600 potassium, and I mean, there are products out there that have a wide range. I've taken products that are as low as 100 milligrams serving, and ones that are as high as 1,200 milligrams of
Wow.
servings.
Hmm.
Imagine the difference in my body. So it took me years to understand what my sweat rate was, and it took me years to understand how to hydrate properly. So if you want to go, because you're going to sweat hard swimming,
Yes.
biking,
Yes.
and running, you don't know it, but the only way to know it is to measure yourself and weigh yourself. So what eventually happens is how much water can you take in? So if you're doing a marathon in hot weather, 4 hours, say, and you're going to lose, 12 to 16 pounds, right? So what's that, 6 to 8 kilos? You got to figure out a way to replace that, especially if you're losing electrolytes. How are you going to replace all that?
Right.
So
Right.
anyway, there's my hack.
Yeah.
It's kind of confusing, but it's not that confusing.
Yeah. No, that's powerful. And then the other thing too that happens when, you're seeing that weight loss on the scale, pre and then post training, there's
Mhm.
a big component of that is glycogen too, right? So you're also using up some of that stored muscle glycogen while you're doing the work,
You
which
you
releases.
are, but
Yeah.
yes, yes, you are, but that's more you it's going to be fuel for you, but really the what I needed to do to not bonk on races or to not get severely dehydrated, because I've done some races in exceptionally warm weather
Mm.
that were very long, like
That's tough.
80K, 120, 140K races in the middle of the summer in the middle of the desert, right? Where I was losing,
Right.
2.5 kilos an hour, and I could only take in 2 kilos an hour. So I'm losing a pound an hour. Um, and in a 12-hour race, I'm 12 pounds lighter. That's dangerous,
That's dangerous. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then also an hour run where you're totally dehydrated will affect your brain power and your performance to do other things when you're done with it. If you can hydrate properly, it's super important.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And this is a reminder. It's super important because I find sometimes I neglect these very, very minimal things and there's no good reason to do it, right? Except that it just gives you a
Right.
headache later and then you have a hard time rehydrating.
Right.
So, something that you said earlier, I just wanted to just come back to. So when I was saying, oh, I only went for an hour run, there's two different kinds of energies in which we can say that. And so there's a way where it's like I only did an hour because I'm such a loser and I can't believe it and I'm so upset at myself. I should have done more.
Right.
There's that. And then there's the only because yeah, I am actually able to run more or my normal could be more and I've done an Ironman
Hmm.
and so I know what more running feels like and so it was only an hour and it's not coming back to what you had said about compassion, it's not an uncompassionate thing. It's more like I just know where I stand and what I'm
Yeah.
able to do. And so for today, it felt like just a shorter run for me,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's true. And I love that because when if you're at the level where you can go for an hour run, it's only an hour. That's freaking awesome. I mean, that's like you're fit. Like you're fit, and that's a cool thing. But yeah, like you and I both know when you go to do a long race, like an hour is only an hour, man. You got to run a lot longer,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
You got to train a lot more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So if there was any last words that you wanted to share, and as we wind down our episode today, I also want to tell you. that I have so enjoyed every moment of this conversation. And again, I'm going to share with you that there is just so much inspiration and so much beautiful shares that you've offered us today, so much value today from what you've shared. And just a reminder around
Mhm.
having that courage and that mindset to really just get into anything that you want to get into, knowing that it's never enough and it's never too late and that there's always more and everything is possible. I'm curious if you have anything else that you wanted to share and just add on before we conclude our call today.
Ah, I mean, yeah, I constantly think about because I apply it to work and I apply it to friendships and my kids, and my kids are grown now, but my kids and work and a lot of people that I help, and it's like something that I wish somebody would have taught me early on how to lean into, and that is being intentionally optimistic. And um, you and I are very fortunate, right? We're not dealing with any kind of like terminal disease. We didn't have an accident when we were a kid that, we lost a limb. I mean, there's some people that deal with some really, really heavy stuff, and they can be intensely optimistic too, because, I mean, gosh, people can overcome almost, so much, and it's unbelievable, and those are inspiring. But just normal everyday people like you and me that happen to be living our lives and being very fortunate that we're healthy and a thinker and kind of self-reliant or whatever, um, is to be intentionally optimistic. And that's like, I wish I would have started that earlier, because when I said like early on, I had that conversation with myself, like first thing was for me was to be honest, right? Stop being delusional, like figure out what your problems are and figure out your good things too. Like lean on those and kind of walk away from then like forgive yourself, right? You didn't know, but you do know. But the third thing is the most important thing, I think, and that is like realize that until God, life, your whatever tells you otherwise, your best days are ahead of you.
So good.
Like just accept it. Just accept that your best days are ahead of you. Now, some people, I know them, you know them, they go, oh, when I was younger, this, and oh, I could have done this when I was that, and oh, you know what, I could never do this because it's too late.
Right.
I'm calling BS on all of it,
I'm in.
right? Until you're forced to accept it, don't limit yourself. Your best days are ahead of you. Be intensely optimistic. And here I am. I just turned 60 this summer. 60, right? I'm getting ready to do my 19th Ironman later the next year. I'm
Okay.
gonna do it as an athlete, right? I still like I had like 4 or 5 hobbies that if I would have started them when I was in my teens, I'd be a world beater. I'm starting them now. Like, who cares? My best days are ahead of me until somebody tells me not. And so I would say that we are masters at limiting ourselves, and we're masters at putting ourselves in a box and wrapping it up and storing it away, right? We're just good at that. And I really live intentionally optimistic and hardcore optimistic for the last 20, 25 years because I didn't start that early enough.
Mm,
And if I can still feel that now, why doesn't everybody? Why aren't you trying to be your best self, like starting right now?
right. So good. So good, Dave.
I hate to preach. I don't mean it preachy or whatever, but I'm just saying like it's such a cool, liberating, invigorating thought. If you could just believe your best days are ahead of you, then they will be.
Hmm. Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. And this is so powerful and what a beautiful way that we end our show today, because how many of us are limiting ourselves really from our own voice in our mind? Nobody else has told us we couldn't. And we're surrounding ourselves by people who possibly are showing us that we do have limitations. And so, coming back to what I was sharing earlier when we first started recording, was I follow people on Instagram who are further ahead in life than me because that is my trajectory. Instead of feeling
Mhm.
like, I've lost certain aspects of my life or time or opportunities, there's always opportunities. There's always a way for you to improve. And what I remember, even when I first started my career, I remember I was doing personal training. I was going around people's homes and I was doing in-person training. I was in my early 20s. And I remember my clients saying to me like, oh, just wait and see, Sherry, when you have kids, everything is going to change. You make it look so easy. Just wait and see when you get older. And now I am
Right.
43 and I have had
Right.
kids. And that's just for me more credibility. And I actually feel more fit than ever. Why? Because I've been training more. So the last 23 years, I've had extra training. I've had 23 more years of training than I did in my early 20s, right? And every year you train, you get fitter. And so
Yeah.
it
And
accumulates over time.
and
Your
people are
best
going to
days
limit
are
you
ahead of you.
going, dude, you just don't know. Oh, wait till you get older and you get
Right.
tired. And are you kidding me? I mean, I still go to clubs and I live in Vegas. So, there's always a lot to do here, going to see concerts and whatever else. And, people will be like, oh, are you kidding me? It's a work night. It's a
Right.
school night. I'm in bed by 8 o'clock. And I'm like, dude, I didn't even start cooking dinner until 9.
Right.
Right? Like live a little. Like who's going to limit you? Nobody's going to limit you. Just go do it.
Yeah.
Right?
So good. So good, David. Thank you so much for this conversation. I've loved it, enjoyed every moment.
Yeah.
You're so incredibly
Yeah, for
inspiring.
sure. I'm glad we got a chance to talk. If there's a reason for us to talk again, let's do it for sure. I
There
totally
will
would.
be. I have a feeling
Yeah.
about that. So, if somebody wanted to learn more about you, where could they go to connect with you? And I think you also have a couple of really powerful books. You have a book that just came out also recently. Where
Mhm.
could they grab that?
Books are all only place they're ever bought is on Amazon. So books are available on Amazon. Just look me up, David Rich. I have two books that are on Amazon right now. One's Winning in the Middle of the Pack. It's this idea that when you're in the middle of a pack, nobody's watching, nobody cares, but you can win, right? Just it's a pretty cool thing. I give like life lessons compared to sports lessons and business lessons, and like how's running a big company like running 100 miles, which there's a lot of parallels. And then I did my most recent book for public consumption was on I interviewed 15 people about their emotional journeys with cancer,
Mm.
and I followed them for a couple of years, not with the cancer journey, but the emotional journey. And and then I wrote a book about their emotional journeys with cancer. 15 totally different people,
Mm.
and some were doctors, some were patients, loved ones, caregivers, and then to connect the stories, that's when I zigzagged across the country to connect the stories. So cycle of lives or winning in the middle pack, or look me up, David Richman. I have a website, or just jump on Amazon. The books are audibles or in real form, and I think they're pretty good.
Awesome. I'm sure they are. I'm going to check them out too. Thank you so much, David.
Oh,
Enjoy this.
you're welcome, Sherry. Thank you.